Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you missed the last video, go check it out. We bought a plasma table, we got it together, and we started cutting some stuff. Now, the goal and the plan for today is I want to get this thing cutting better and cleaner, and we got a bunch of stuff to build for this table. So let's get right into it. First things first, I'm gonna start messing around with different air pressures. I've already done a lot of different testing with like feed rates and the speeds and everything and the cut height. The cut height did help a lot, but I think we just need to bump up the air pressure. The book for this plasma cutter says to run at about 40 amps and 55 PSI for 1/8" steel. I've done a bunch of research looking at other people's kind of settings. It seems like everybody's cutting at like 70, 75 PSI. So I think bumping up the pressure would help. So I'm gonna try that first. And we already changed the tip out. I know we got a really good brand new tip in here. I mean, everything's brand new. The plasma table is brand new. The plasma cutter is brand new. So it's something with the settings. We're just getting some dross and a little bit of taper. So you can see that part there. You can see there's a little bit of dross on it, and it honestly comes off pretty easy. But the biggest thing is like these holes, the cut is tapered. So the outside or the top side of the cut is good, but the bottom side is a lot smaller. So you'd have to go through and drill those holes out. And after it's been cut with heat, it kind of hardens that steel right around the edge. So it's a pain in the butt to drill. So I want to get this figured out. I want to get this thing cutting straight, and then we got a bunch of stuff to build. So before we actually start cutting, I got in the last box right here, and that is the laptop stand. So this thing bolts onto one of the legs, and then we can mount the laptop right on the table. Makes it nice and easy and convenient for that. So we got to put this thing together real quick, and then we'll start messing around with the cutter, see if we get this thing cutting better. While bumping up that pressure definitely helped with the dross. That is the top side. There's really maybe just a little bit of splatter on that one little hole right there. The back side looks really good, and this stuff, it pops right off. I can pop it off with a fingernail. So really good. It's still got just a little bit of taper. You can notice it in these holes too. You might not be able to see it on the camera, but there's still a little bit of taper, which tells me that it's still too high. But I've stopped this torch like 4 times and checked the torch height, and we are right at 60 thou, right where it should be. So I'm not sure why it's still tapered. I mean, I know plasmas do cut with a little bit of taper, but I think that's a little bit too much. So I don't know, I'm gonna do a little bit more messing around, but that's honestly really close to being, you know, close enough to be able to clean up and have a nice part. So a little more dialing in, I think we get it a little better, and we can start building some stuff. All right, you can see I did a ton of testing. So I changed the pressures, the amperages, and then I started messing with the voltage for that nominal height for the torch height control. And I just was trying to get this dross under control, which I got it very close. I mean, this stuff, like I said, it picks off pretty quick with a fingernail or a screwdriver. But these ones over here, I got them actually cutting nice and square. And what I was doing is I just kept lowering the torch height, in the post processor. This is at 40 thousandths with 0 spring back, and you can see it's actually cutting pretty straight, and there's a little bit of dross. Like I said, the stuff, you can see it just picks off. It's not a huge deal. I think it's kind of a part of the process with plasma cutting. You can see that one got a little bit more around the holes. Oh, another thing I was doing is in that post processor, you can slow down a radius. So I had these holes slowed down, and I think that one I had it sped back up, and that's why I had a little more dross. This one I slowed back down. You can see just a little bit around that hole. So I think I'm happy with that. I wrote down all my settings for 1/8 inch plate. So I'm going to build a few things out of 1/8, like the hole or the mount for the plasma cutter. I'm going to mount it on the wall. A lot of people put it underneath. I don't like the idea of having 240 volts underneath a water table that could potentially leak and drip onto that. So I'm going to mount that thing. Well, this whole plasma table is going right there. I'm going to mount that plasma cutter just up on the wall right behind the table. I think that's going to be a very good spot for it. I'm also going to kind of integrate a mount for the filter underneath that. So that should be pretty cool. And then I got this expanded metal here. I'm going to make a whole shelf on the bottom just for holding, you know, lighter stuff, like maybe tools or maybe some steel, whatever I feel like putting down there. I think it'd be really nice to have a shelf down there as well. Well, here goes nothing, guys. We got the program loaded up here, got this piece on here, and this mount ended up turning out a lot bigger than I thought it would. So this plate right here is like 22.2 inches wide. My mount here is 22.1, so I had to line this thing up perfectly right to the edge, and I think it's gonna work. And I also had to cut this because this was like over 5 feet, so I had to trim that down so it would fit on the table this way. So hopefully everything goes as planned and I don't completely destroy this sheet of metal. So I think we're good to go. I got everything set up. I got all my cut lines, my cut bend lines, cutting first, and those have no lead ins or lead outs. This should just be a straight line. Well, I figured it'd be a good idea to do a dry run, so that's what we got going on right now. You can see I'm just making sure everything is working, all the post-processing, and I think we're good. It looks like it's good as long as that torch stays lit and cutting. I think this is gonna work. Well, guys, it's all worth it in the end. I have been struggling with this design, just designing this all, like probably 4 hours it took me. I'm just trying to learn the program. I was getting really fed up, but I can say now that I am stoked. I absolutely love it. The only thing I noticed is these pierce holes are bigger than the kerf width. I'm not sure how you'd go about changing that. So the pierce, I mean, the pierce is going to be what it's going to be, and the cut's going to be what it's going to be. So I'm not really sure how about that, but everything else looks so good. And look at how close I was to this edge. You can see that one. That one's got maybe a 1/16. I was cutting her a little close, but let's pull this thing out. It should just, oh yeah, comes right out. Let's flip it over. Oh yeah, that is perfect. Look at the back. There's barely any dross. There's just maybe just a little bit of an edge on it that'll clean up with, you know, a flap disc in about 10 seconds. Just buzz around it real quick. All this bigger stuff right here, it comes right off. I think we got this thing pretty much dialed in. So what I'm gonna do now is just take a flap disc and just go around, clean up these edges. We gotta bend across right here. We gotta bend across right there, and then we got to bend these two tabs out, and that is what our filter is going to hang right in these notches here. we're good to go with the shelf. I made a hookup and I don't know what I was thinking. I should have made it a little bit lower or made this one a little bit longer, because it's kind of in the way of the filter, but what I can do is just rotate the filter up. Since it's not really bolted in, it'll just kind of spin in here, so you'll just have to lift the filter out of the way a little bit. I was gonna hang my big cord right here, so it's not a big deal. It's not bugging me enough to want to redo the whole thing, so that's good enough for now. I'm really digging that. One thing, the bends. I thought it was gonna bend a lot easier. This is 1/8 inch plate, and even with these score lines in here, it still was a bear to bend, and it wouldn't fit in my press brake. So I had to do it all by hand. All in all, it turned out pretty good, and it's definitely gonna be sturdy. If I had to do it again, I'd probably use a little bit thinner of material. This 1/8 inch is just kind of a pain to bend by hand, and you can see there's a pretty big radius on it, and I had to smack it around with a hammer to get it to bend. But either way, that is done. Next, I want to build a torch shield. So I got this file. I actually got this from FireShare from Langmuir.com. They have a ton of different designs on here of just anything really. People just put their files on there. So I'm using one of those. I had to scale it down. I'm gonna make this out of aluminum. I'm really curious to see how this will cut aluminum. So I'm gonna do a few test cuts, and then if we get it halfway decently close enough, I'll load this file up and we'll cut out the torch shield. All right, we got the table in place. I got the plasma mounted up, got the cutter up there. Everything is looking really good. One thing, these cables are a little bit short, so I did buy new cables just to kind of run it back underneath the machine and up the wall here where it's nice and clean. Also the guard here, a little splash guard to keep the water from hitting any of these connections and shorten anything out. That's going to be very nice, not having to worry about those electronics getting wet. Now you guys saw we did powder coat the mount and that little splash guard. That stuff looks really good in black. You can see up there, kind of matches the plasma cutter. If you guys want to check out that powder, that is from Prismatic Powders. They are sponsoring this video, so head over to prismaticpowders.com. They have a ton of different powders, ton of different colors, about anything you'd ever need. Prismaticpowders.com, go check them out. So next thing on the list, what we got to do is I cleaned up the table. I want to weld in these, I think there's a bar sink drain. They're quite a bit smaller than your actual sink drain. I think those are like 3.5 inches. I believe this is 1.5, but what I'm planning on doing is I don't want anything sitting above the table level. Even just having this flange sitting above the level of the table, it keeps water in the table. So I'm going to put this up underneath the bottom, and then I'm going to weld around the table onto this drain. So these are both stainless. It's going to be super easy to weld, so I figured I might as well weld it. That way it doesn't leak, for one, and for two, I should be able to get all the water out of these tables. Makes it a lot easier to clean. right, guys, we are back together. We got the shelf, and I am so surprised how easy that stuff warped. That is 1.5 inch square tube, and it was really thin wall. I don't remember the wall thickness, but it was the thinnest stuff they had, just because I'm not planning on putting anything heavy on there, and I wanted it light. But you can see it warped. The whole lengthwise it warped, it's kind of like a U now, just from welding in these cross braces. So that's not a big deal. You can't even really tell. So as far as this drain goes, I didn't want to pull a pipe out or a tube out that is permanent. So I left the valve open. What I'm gonna do is just take this whenever I drain it, shove that in there, put a bucket right there, and then when I'm done, it's out of the way. We'll put, throw that right there, and it's out of the way. So I like it. I think it's going to work really good with this having both tied into one. Oh, there's a little bit of water in there. It's going to be a lot nicer, and I was having major issues finding something that adapted. So this is a 1-inch NPS thread, and then they give you this adapter, or you buy it separate, but that is 1.25 inches, like a regular sink drain. There's not many adapters and fittings for 1.25 inches. So I actually found this little coupler here that's got a big rubber seal in it. So you crank that down, and I have filled it up with water. I don't have any leaks, so we are good to go. This mount keeps it nice and sturdy. I think it's going to work really good. Well, that's about the extent of what I wanted to get done with this table. So now that the table is done, we can throw it back together, throw all the slats in, get it filled up with water. Now, a lot of people use borax with the water just to kind of help with the pH level and corrosion and rust. I think it will help. So what I had in there at first was just water. So I'm gonna go get some borax and mix that with water, fill that up, and see how much less it'll rust. Now the slats are just mild steel, so they do rust really quick. They rusted like as soon as I put the water in, they started rusting. So hoping the borax will kind of help that out. But either way, we are good to go with the table. Now we can finally start using it and finish up the white truck. Now the main reason I bought this thing is for the FJ. That thing is gonna need a lot of custom parts, a lot of custom pieces. This table is going to make that so much easier. So I am very excited to get started on that. We got a few other little things to do to the Hilux. We can finish that up, get that out of the shop, and bring in the FJ. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Why don't you go smash that thumbs up button, comment, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.